All right, the Engrossments, Rules, Resolutions, and Credentials Committee will be called to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Ballmer. Alderwoman Davis.
Present.
Alderwoman Howard. Alderman Guenther.
Dan, try that again.
Here.
Thank you. Alderman Oldenburg.
Present.
Alderwoman Rice.
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Here.
Chairman Coatar.
Here.
6 present, you have quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, quorum being present, we'll move on to our business of the day. First and foremost, where are those minutes? Here they are. I hope someone's had a chance to review the minutes. I know I have. The chair will entertain a motion to approve the Engrossment Rules, Resolutions, and Credentials Committee minutes dated Wednesday, October 6th, 2021.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved by the Alderman for the 9th, seconded by the Alderwoman for the 19th, that we adopt the minutes from October 6th, 2021. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Ballmer. Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard. Alderman Guenther.
Aye.
Alderman.
Aye.
Got you. Thank you.
Right.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderwoman Rice.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Chairman Coatar.
Aye.
6 aye votes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. By a vote, we've adopted the minutes of October 6th, 2021. Okay, moving along here. We don't have any board bills for review today. We do have a resolution. For those tuning in from the public, now this is the Rules, Resolutions, and Engrossment Committee. This is where we typically would handle proposed changes to our rules. This is what we're dealing with today. I know we have a few people signed up to be public speakers. I'd ask that they be patient. They'll have an opportunity to address the committee and to the public after we get through a presentation by the resolution sponsor and questions by members of the committee. And with that, I will turn it over to the Alderwoman from the 13th, Alderwoman Schweitzer, for Resolution 178.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman and members of the Rules, Resolutions, or Engrossment Rules, Resolutions, and Credentials Committee for taking the time today to hear this resolution. I very much appreciate your time, and I will be brief. Before I say anything further, though, if it's all right with the chairman, can the clerk please read the resolution?
Yeah, that'd be fine. Do you have a copy of it, Sharita?
I do. I have it on my phone. I'm having issues with printing, but I do have it. Resolution 178, amending Board of Aldermen rules to preclude members from voting or being counted present at meetings when driving a vehicle. Whereas Article 4, Section 8 of the City of St. Louis Charter provides that the Board of Aldermen shall adopt rules for its own proceedings subject to the charter. And whereas the Board of Aldermen has adopted the rules for its proceedings for the 2021-2022 legislation session via its approval of Resolution 1. And whereas the purpose of this resolution is to amend the Board of Aldermen rules to address safety concerns associated with aldermen participating in meetings of the Board of Aldermen or its committee remotely, by video or by other means while driving a vehicle, by the addition of the new rule precluding aldermen and alderwomen from voting or being counted as present at a meeting of the Board of Aldermen or its committees if they are driving a vehicle during such meetings. Now therefore let it be resolved by the Board of Aldermen that the board hereby amends its rules by adoption of a new rule which shall be and read as follows. No alderman or alderwoman may vote or be counted present at a meeting of the Board of Aldermen or Board of Aldermen Committee if they are driving a vehicle. Introduced this 18th day of February, 2022 by the Honorable and Schweitzer, Alderwoman of the 13th Ward, and the following honorable alderpersons: Christine Ingrassia, Alderwoman of the 6th Ward, Annie Rice, Alderwoman of the 8th Ward, Bill Stevens, Alderman of the 12th Ward, Pamela Boyd, Alderwoman of the 27th Ward, Dan Guenther, Alderman of the 9th Ward, Marlene Davis, Alderwoman of the 19th Ward, Megan Green, Alderwoman of the 15th Ward, and Sarah Moore, Alderwoman of the 11th Ward.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk, for reading that. All right, Alderwoman, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So as you just heard, this resolution's goal is to prevent participation in our meetings while people are driving a vehicle. Too often, we've all seen it, members of our body participate in our meetings while driving. This not only puts them at risk, but it puts others at risk as well. And I think that this is something we need to put into our rules to prevent in the future for the safety of everyone involved. In response to this resolution during the meeting, some of our members spoke about, we don't need this resolution, we should just be back in person. I agree with going back in person. I think that makes sense, and I think that's what we should do. However, I would also agree, this is probably a topic for another resolution, but that we would need to follow the rules of the city that other city employees are following and be vaccinated and wear our masks. And if not vaccinated, then go through testing requirements. That's a whole other can of worms there. But knowing that even if we do go back in person soon, which again, I hope we do, we don't know if this pandemic is ending, not ending, if we'll have something like this come up again. And if we do, and if there is a point in time where we're back in virtual meetings, this is something that will prevent this sort of behavior from happening in the future as well. And we'll just make sure that this is there for us and is something that we can all follow going forward. We all probably received an email from TrailNet last week that talked about the over 150 pedestrians in the region that died due to traffic accidents. And I know that none of us want to carry that sort of weight if we were to, if someone driving and participating in our meetings were to find themselves in that awful situation of being involved in a crash like that. So I just want to point out that this is a very serious issue, and I hope that I can that this resolution earns your support and favorable consideration. I appreciate your time.
All right, thank you very much, Alderwoman. We're going to go through and take questions from members of the committee. I don't believe Alderman Vollmer is here. Alderwoman Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess I do want to ask a couple of questions of the sponsor. And as a co-sponsor, I do have the same concerns, but I have them in a different framework that I understand. So if you don't mind, I'd like to ask some questions of the sponsor.
That'd be just fine.
Okay. Alderwoman Schweitzer, when we look at this bill, I took time to kind of look at what we have as far as official state guidelines for operating vehicles. And most of it talks about you need to be you need to be safe and not texting, number one. And then the second part of it was the being wireless. So I truly understand when I see people with holding a phone and trying to drive, that scares me. But I haven't seen that yet from any members of our body because I think most of them have the ability to use their mechanism in their car to be able to talk and not hold an item and or have to use a lot of manual things when they're driving. I know I do. I don't even have to move my hand from my steering wheel because I can mute and everything from my steering wheel. So there's a lot of things that we should take into consideration, and I totally agree about safety. But let's just talk it out for a moment and see how we can do this without taking someone's vote away. Sometimes maybe we could look at some other kind of sanction and make that the first time and add in there, some things like that. So let's see how we can be more creative. Taking a vote from a legislator is it takes it to another level. And I just want to have conversation about it. That's why I wanted it to come to committee. So can you give me your thoughts a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I appreciate that. The goal with this resolution is to make sure that it is a big enough deal so that it doesn't happen. I think that a sanction or a slap on the wrist, it's probably just as easy for people to pull over and participate at the time in which they're participating as it is to do anything else. I understand that with the pandemic, everyone's lives have been thrown into chaos a little bit, and sometimes people have to go somewhere and everything like that. I've never seen in our meetings a time when people haven't been excused if there is something that comes up for them. So I would imagine that, most people, and of course, I know how seriously you take your participation in the meetings, and I think most of us do that, and we try to be present and here in our meetings, both committee and in the regular Board of Aldermen meetings. So to me, it's really not asking for that much. It's asking for people to be fully present in the meetings, and in a way that is a safety concern for both themselves and others. Looking through our rules, we have smoking being banned in cities, so you can't, smoke and participate in the meeting if you're smoking in the room, and your vote's taken away in that time too. You're not allowed to be even in the room. So I don't feel like this is out of the norm for when we ask people to follow rules. And this specifically, the reason that this is the way it's put together is because I understand if someone perhaps is listening to a meeting on the way somewhere, and they're on their Zoom and it's in their, their cell phone holder, and they're not interacting at all. It's just listening. It's basically like the radio or a podcast. But the fact that we have to turn our video on to vote, there is kind of that moment of struggling with the phone. I think we've all been in meetings where even if people are just in the car, sometimes then there's a concern where their phone starts, we get the feedback going, and all of a sudden they're dealing with their phone, and it's a major distraction. And these sorts of distractions are what causes serious accidents. And I just think it's a responsibility measure, a common sense measure. I hope that not a single person ends up having their vote taken away because of breaking this rule. I would hope that everyone can just follow this, and that's how it goes. I mean, of course, we have points of order in meetings all the time, and perhaps this is something that is going to negatively affect people if they continue to drive while also participating in meetings. But I would hope that this would just kind of nip it in the bud, honestly.
When you just said something that was very crucial. So given a point of order from the president of the board would be a good thing to put in here too as well, because that gives you a warning at the moment to pull over. I think that needs to be included. And if you had to go to another level as far as taking a vote away from someone, you always have to have enough. We always just call it documentation of purpose in place before you take those kinds of actions. And so I like that part of point of order by the president or whoever is, if we're in a committee meeting, the chair, in order to get someone's attention to pull over. I think that would be very good because it wouldn't be just if you're driving, I'm taking it, you can't vote right now. And sometimes we're in a hurry and things are frazzled. And I know we've got a lot of members that they have a lot of different responsibilities that they have to try to do in the midst of wanting to be present for meetings and for committee hearings and board meetings. I think I may have done it myself twice. Doctor's appointment ran way too long. And I ran to the car. Well, not run, I'm not running anymore, but I got to the car and I immediately just turned the meeting on so I would be present. If you see me in my car, I'm not driving my car. So but I like what you just said, and I would like to see that added in there, that language added in there. It would help us. It would help me a lot in the understanding of this. That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderwoman, from the 19th. Okay, moving down, I don't believe Alderwoman Howard's here. So moving to Alderman Guenther. Questions, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll start with comments. I do think that, I want to thank the Alderwoman from the 13th for bringing this resolution before us. And I also do believe that in the 2 years plus, however it's been, that we've been conducting all of our hearings on Zoom, that there are quite a few rules, I think, pertaining to Zoom that maybe should be in the future outlined in our rules of the board. One that comes to mind, I know that I've sat through a number of committee hearings where the chairman will not recognize people to speak if they are not on video. Well, that's not spelled out in our rules, but yet that seems to be a rule that we have accepted and also not taken a vote if you're not on video. So we've already put in place some kind of ad hoc rules of how we're going to operate on Zoom. So I think that, this is something that, the rules committee, and especially when we go into the next session and we create our rules, it would be prudent of us to say if we are going to proceed on Zoom or, virtually, how we can kind of specify some of our things. So, so because of that, I am in full support of this. Like I said, we have kind of rules that we've just accepted that aren't literally spelled out in our rules of the board so far. And also, I did read the report that TrailNet put forth. I think two of the deadliest roads in St. Louis go through my ward, South Broadway and Gravois. That report outlines that those are two of the worst roads for distracted driving and for pedestrian and bicycle injuries and fatalities. So I do think it's important that we go ahead and start making our rules. So that's kind of my comments. The Alderwoman from the 13th, I had just a couple questions though, if you would be kind enough to answer a few. I see a head shake. So one of them was last Friday when we tried to suspend the rules to pass this on the floor. A few of our colleagues had said that there were some issues with the wording that need to be cleaned up. And I guess I will be specific that the Alderwoman from the first, had some issues with some of the wording. Have you contacted her to see if there's any sort of amendments that she feels like need to be made to kind of clean anything up, or has there been no conversation there?
I have reached out, but I have not heard what amendments that particular alderperson would like.
Okay. All right. And then I guess my second question is regarding, because I always try to be seated for any meeting that we have and not in a vehicle. But there was one time where I was sitting in the back passenger seat and had to do a Zoom while riding. What's your idea on how, if we're riding in a car, Should we turn our camera to show who's driving so that we know who's not, so that we know that the person on Zoom isn't driving, or how do you foresee that being worked out?
Thank you for that question. I imagine that, if a point of order were raised that said, Alderman from the 9th appears to be driving, should his vote not count? And you're able to show that that's not the case, then that makes sense to me as kind of showing that that point of order wouldn't necessarily be valid. Like I said at the beginning, I understand the pandemic has thrown so many of our lives into chaos with different changes in work, in picking up kids, in where we are at any given point in time. And so it's not trying to make anyone's life more difficult. If you happen to be in your car and you pull over and you're doing your meeting in your car, to me, that's a situation that you're in, that's your choice. But I think it becomes a situation that is no longer your choice if it's putting others in danger. And that's really what this resolution strives to address, is if older people during meetings, participating in meetings, are doing so while driving the car, actively driving, not even just sitting in the driver's seat. I mean, I think it's up to each person to where they want to have their meeting when it's virtual. I get that, but again, it really strives to address when it becomes a safety issue.
Okay, those are my only questions. Thank you for answering them. And again, I'm in support of this resolution, but I do feel like it's the first step of us taking a look overall at our rules, including things like being able to vote if we're not on video. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will yield.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Oldenburg, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have no questions.
Thank you, Alderman. Alderwoman Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate Alderman Oldenburg's conciseness this afternoon. So I think my colleague from the 9th made some really good points and raised, back when we decided to move online, I had some questions for the president's office and for the clerk about, what sorts of rules do we need to adopt to make sure that we're functioning well. And I think we didn't do that, and we kind of fell into a rhythm of operation that has worked so far for the Board of Aldermen. I think that speaks to, all of us doing our level best to participate in a way that honors our role as representatives and honors the commitment to be transparent with the community as well. And so I think this is one area where we can choose to lead in a way that the state has not stepped up to provide these protections. So knowing that our vehicular homicide rates are significant, that people are dying in interactions with vehicles, that our state statutes restrict our ability to pass safe driving laws and distracted driving laws here in this city in ways that are unfortunate. And that was brought up in the letter that is in the folder from BikeWorks. I believe that's in that letter, talks about we have very few restrictions on what we can do while we're driving in Missouri, including even having open containers, which I think is really interesting. So we can choose to sort of regulate ourselves. And I think there is a piece of an honor system that comes in with this, that the Alderwoman from the 13th has specifically used the word driving a vehicle, not just operating, because under the criminal code, operating can be just sitting in the driver's seat of a vehicle while the vehicle is on. That can be operating, but we're specifically saying while you're driving a vehicle. So we're not saying that you can't have it on and be listening to the meeting. But if you're participating, I think it's fair to say, pull over to the road, put the car in park, or pull over to the side of the road, put the car in park, and participate that way. And it's, you'll know what time it is when you're being called present for a meeting. That's the very beginning. It's easy enough to say, okay, I'm going to take these 5 minutes, make sure that I'm recorded as present. And then if you have to listen while you're headed somewhere, if there's an emergency, because Lord knows all of our colleagues with children have had to run off and pick up a kid, or run to a doctor's appointment or things like that. So I think it's fair for us to say, that this restriction is important to us as a body, and we're going to put this in place to model safety to our citizens. And on the point of the point of order, I think Alderman from the 19th, that's a good point. But I think the point of order mechanism is baked into our rules without us having to specifically write that into this rule, because so say the rule that we have that says if you are present in the chambers, you must vote. The way to challenge that is a point of order, right? So it's not written in the text of the rule itself that the challenge is a point of order. It's just understood that a point of order at any time can challenge to any of our rules. So I don't think that we need to enunciate that here in this rule. I think the rule is self-contained as far as the rest of our rules go. And it would be fairly easy to say, point of order, Mr. President, it looks like this person is operating a vehicle. They can probably turn on their video, show it around, and they're not, they're either parked. I've taken calls from the parking lot of the vet office. I can show, hey, I'm sitting sideways. I'm not driving. The background behind me is not moving. That type of a thing. I think our honor system of trusting each other that when we say we're not driving, we mean it. We have taken oaths of office, and I think that our duty is to be honest here. And so I don't see this creating any issues for folks. And in the case of an emergency, you're right that it is significant to take away the vote of a member. But if someone had an emergency and we were in person and they weren't able to get to City Hall, well, they don't have a vote, right? So we don't have another mechanism for when we're in person for someone to participate and have a vote recorded if they can't get to City Hall. So maybe that's something that we look at as we're coming back in person, is how could we make it more able, like we don't have proxy voting or anything like that. And so there are mechanisms that already exist that remove a member's right to vote if they can't get to City Hall. So we have things that are in place there. And I will just say, as someone who watches meetings and watches committee meetings that I'm not on, it has been confusing, and sometimes the audio issues, as well as sort of people's cameras moving around and things when they're operating a vehicle, and the audio through the Bluetooth has caused echoing issues, and we've all been in those meetings where it's just sort of chaos. And I think this is one way to help streamline that. We're putting our best forward for the public, and when we're asking them to participate in meetings with us, we're asking for them to bring their best to us as well, like requiring them to be on video, which I don't entirely agree with, because I think it's an accessibility issue, but as that is what we've accepted as participation at the moment, I think this rule follows in that line of thinking. So I don't think I have any questions. I'd considered, is there any other language that is necessary for the rule? And I think it's very straightforward. It's very self-contained. And the mechanism to sort of flesh out if there's a question about if we're following this rule does come up in a point of order, and it's up to the president to make that determination, right? So in any rule that we have, if there's a challenge from the floor, if there's a point of order, the president makes a determination. A member can appeal that, and we have a voting process to go in place to enforce these rules. So I just want to thank the Alderwoman from the 13th for writing this up for us. I think it's a good next step for us, and we really should, if we're going to continue to meet virtually, there may be other things that we need to do to make us continue to function well. And if we're coming back in person, maybe we look at other ways of voting to make sure that more members can be counted in voting than otherwise would have been if they had to be at City Hall. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alderwoman from the 8th. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
No questions, thank you.
All right. I don't have any questions. I would ask, as chairman, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor if the clerk would go ahead and do that. Yeah, I think this is a good idea. I think practically, like has been pointed out by members of the committee, if you see someone driving, there's a point of order made, and then depending on what the chair of the meeting or the president does, we can go from there. Hopefully this will deter people from doing this in the future. I know I'm guilty of doing it once or twice. I made the judgment call to try to be at the meeting instead of being absent, and in retrospect, probably should have just pulled over. It would have been easier, which should be allowed under this ordinance. So, I think this is a fine addition to our rules. I'm happy to support it. I know, I guess, Alderwoman, do you have any other Alderwoman from the 13th, do you have any other comments before we allow a couple public speakers to present?
No, thank you very much.
Okay, let me get my list here. All right, we have 3 members of the public who have signed up to speak. Let me, in accordance with our rules, let me go ahead and just read the ground rules. Since it's only 3 people, I'll go ahead and summarize these. Basically, we're going to give you 3 minutes to speak. We're going to swear you in, ask you to identify yourself, give us the whatever 100 block you live on, and then go ahead and speak, and I'll keep a timer, and please try to keep it to 3 minutes. Okay, so first and foremost, we've got Sean Ruprecht Belt. Is Sean Ruprecht Belt here? I don't see that person. Madam Clerk, am I missing out on anybody here? Do you see Sean Ruprecht Belt?
I don't
No.
see
Okay.
him on the
Okay,
list.
moving on. The other 2 I know are here. Mr. Michael Browning. Mr. Browning, are you there? I see you.
Yes, I am.
All right, good, good. Give me 1 second. Let me swear you in here. Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Browning, you got 3 minutes. Go ahead. Floor is yours.
Okay. Hi, my name is Michael. I live on the 4400 block of Oakland Avenue. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you guys today. I set aside time to come speak with you because this issue is really important to me and it's important to people I care about. I support the rule change because it's sadly necessary. You may have heard the piece, I think Anne referenced it, TrailNet statistics about pedestrian fatalities and injuries. They are on the rise recently. Traffic violence claimed about 42 lives in 2021 and injured almost 400 people last year. I'm a bike commuter and I've seen up close the dangers of distracted driving. It's terrifying and it actively discourages the adoption of alternative transportation by city residents. Seeing an alderperson engage in a meeting while driving is disheartening, and it's a grim reminder that pedestrian safety is still an afterthought in the city. It should be a priority for the Board of Aldermen to keep the streets of St. Louis safe. The least you guys can do is keep the streets safe from yourselves. I'm asking you to lead by example. Hold your colleagues accountable. The same way that any of us, any of my friends would do if we saw a colleague or friend causing harm to one another. Yesterday, one of your colleagues participated in a meeting while driving, and they used a false background to obscure that fact. I don't know if they were pulled over or not. This rule change would help us clarify that and make sure that they were being safe and make sure we could deter that kind of behavior in the future. So please be the leaders that we elected you to be. I really think we can expect the investments in our city to work better and be more successful if the leaders change their behavior to meet those expectations. So if you do anything to amend the rule today, I urge you to make the penalties more meaningful than just being counted as absent. If nothing else, please pass this rule as written to discourage members from driving while legislating. Show us that you value our safety and that you're willing to hold each other accountable and set an example for the rest of our city.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Browning, for joining us today and for your comments. Next, we've got Kevin Hahn Petruso. Kevin, let's see. Do you, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, you're good. Do you affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, and would you go ahead and identify yourself and the 100 block you live on?
Yes, my name is Kevin Hahn Petruso. I live in the 3900 block of Hartford. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the board or the committee for having me. I just wanted to offer some support to this resolution from TrailNet. I'm the policy manager here at TrailNet, and our focus is on improving safety for people walking, biking, and using transit. And I'll keep my remarks brief. We're supportive of this and any effort to reduce distracted driving in the city and in the region. We know from looking at crashes in St. Louis City last year that 11% of pedestrian crashes, so crashes where a pedestrian is involved, 11% of those crashes, distracted driving was a circumstance. And similarly, 10% of bike crashes was a circumstance as well. The other bit of statistics that I'd like to offer is in Missouri, and I don't know if I'm frozen or not.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. In Missouri in 2021, 59% of people killed in distracted driving crashes were the person who was not a distracted driver. So we see that 59% of those people were not involved in distracted driving. So this is an issue that affects, of course, the person who's driving, but more than half the time it's affecting someone who wasn't. So, we're happy to support and help the Board of Aldermen on any other.
Now he's frozen, right? That's not me? Okay. All right, we'll give Mr. Han Petruso a minute to see if his connection improves. While we're doing that, I think many members of the committee have referenced it, but if you haven't read that TrailNet report this year, definitely, it's in your inbox somewhere. Pull it up, it's worth a read.
Mr. Chairman, you also have some other alderpersons that are listening that want to speak.
Oh, thank you, Alderwoman Davis. Okay, well, we seem to have lost Mr. Han Petruso. If he rejoins us, we can let him finish up his remarks. In the meantime, let me go to some other aldermen who are on the call but aren't on the committee. And I apologize if I get this out of order in seniority. I'll do my best here. But I see Alderwoman Ingrassia is here from the 6th Ward. Any comments or questions, Alderwoman?
No questions, thank you.
Alderman Bosley? Anything? Going once, going twice. Okay. Alderwoman Boyd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question, because what I'm hearing with this bill is code of conduct. So do we or don't we have a code of conduct for the Board of Aldermen? And should this be included in the code of conduct?
Alderwoman, that's a good question. I mean, in our rules, a copy of our rules, by the way, are attached to the resolution in case anyone wants to reference them. I mean, I think kind of as a whole, our rules are our code of conduct. I mean, we have rules in here about fining people if they miss meetings. We have all sorts of rules that, we don't always use and maybe enforce regularly, but they're still in here. So I assume, this would be added as a rule. I don't know what the highest number rule is right now. I think it's rule 80. It's in the 90s, never mind. 90 something, 98. So I don't know. I mean, we'll have to get with the clerk and figure out, and Alderwoman from the 13th, I'll defer to you on this. I don't know where we slot this in. I think it just becomes its own rule number. We'd add it at the end.
I agree.
Okay.
And so on that question, because the reason why I asked, it's just like we create these ordinances and these laws, and it's laws already on the book that's not enforced. And so we have rule of conduct for the Board of Aldermen, and they're not enforced. And so that's the challenge that I have with it. I understand what people are saying about the safety of people, but I also look at it's a trust issue to me. It's saying that we don't trust each other when you come to a point where you have to say, well, let me see if you drive and show me that you're not driving. That's a trust issue. And so then that sends a red flag to us as elected officials that we don't trust each other. And so I'm just kind of challenged on that part. And like I said, we have some code of conduct issues that have not been enforced or followed per the Board of Aldermen. And so I'm just trying to figure out how is this going to be, enforced? Is because it'll be new and then people will start looking at it and everybody start looking at each other, or how are we looking at making sure it's enforced? So that's two of the things, the trust issue and the code of conduct, and where does it sit in our code of conduct? Thank you.
Thanks, Alderwoman Boyd. Alderwoman Schweitzer, you're welcome to provide any comment you want in response to Alderwoman Boyd.
Thank you so much. I think that's a very good point. I agree that not all of the rules that I was reading through them today just to prepare for this meeting, and there are definitely some that aren't enforced, but I wouldn't. They're there to reference at any time. If any alderman wanted to call a point of order on any of those rules, they'd be there, and anyone would have the right to do so on the board. And perhaps if we should do some sort of a rules training at some point where there's a deeper dive into the rules. As a new alderperson, I certainly would appreciate that. I'm familiar with the ones that come up all the time, but probably less familiar with the ones that don't. In regard to the trust issue, I certainly don't mean to make anyone feel badly about or that there's a lack of trust. I would hope that there never is a point of order called, because it's very clear that everybody's just not driving while they're participating in the meeting. To me, it's not necessarily about trust. It's just, making sure everybody's following the rules that we set out. Whenever there's a point of order, there's an opportunity to usually, from when I participated, there's an opportunity to discuss that point of order and debate it. And I never have ever thought that the point of orders that have been brought up before were ever trust things. It was more just, is this rule being broken? Yes, no. So to me, this follows that same sort of thing, that same sort of guideline as anything else. And that was the intention.
Thank you, Alderwoman. I see Mr. Han Petruso. I don't know if he's back. He's still on the Zoom. Sir, if you're there and you have any other comments, we'd be happy to hear them since we lost you there.
Hopefully you all caught the gist of what I had, and apologies for that. My computer
That's all right.
crashed.
We got most of it, but go ahead.
Okay.
If you want for a minute or so, floor is yours.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Just the closing thought was, at TrailNet, we support any effort to improve safety, reduce distracted driving, and are happy to help individual alder people or the Board of Aldermen as a whole in the city reduce crashes.
Great. Thank you very much, sir. All right. Any closing thoughts from members of the committee before we entertain a motion? I'll run down the list here. Alderwoman Davis.
Yes, thank you, sir. One of the things that has been said over and over again with a point of order, the decision would be made, if it's a board meeting, would be made by the president of the board, whether or not he would allow that person to vote by instructing them to pull over. If it's a committee hearing, the chair of that committee would also resolve that issue at that moment in the most appropriate way. So it's not necessarily just because we see you driving, you automatically will not be able to be counted present or take a vote. So I'm glad that has been cleared up, because it wasn't that clear before, for the understanding of the public, most especially. And then secondly, for me, I didn't want to take too much time here, because I think we cut off Alderwoman Boyd and we don't know whether or not she was done.
Oh, I apologize. Alderwoman Boyd, do you have anything further?
You are fine, Chair. Thank
sorry.
you, Alderwoman Davis.
Right. Mr. Chair, I am done with my comments, and as much as I don't want to vote for this without feeling somewhat convoluted, I do have extreme interest in safety. I know even before people realize that laws need to be put in place on state levels, when people were holding phones and all that and driving. I know how I got on my children about not driving and texting and holding a phone. So it's important to be safe. And that is a part of our duty as well. Thank you, sir. I'm done.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderman Guenther.
No further comments or questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Alderman Oldenburg.
No, sir. Thank you.
Alderwoman Rice.
Just quickly, I would hope to Alderwoman Boyd's question about respect and trust amongst each other. I don't see this as a rule that we want to use to weaponize against each other. I think that would be so counter to getting work done and being good colleagues and working collaboratively here. I think this is putting this rule into place so that we avoid the situation altogether, that we don't have to ever bring this up. I think most of the members of the public would rather us take an excused absence than to be unsafe, and do as best as we can to make the choice to be fully present with them as we're asking them to be with us. So again, this is not an attempt to point fingers at anybody or break down trust amongst ourselves. We're really just trying to lead by example, that we are going to drive undistracted. We are going to participate in these meetings undistracted. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Alderwoman Clark-Hubbard.
No comments. Thank you.
All right. I know we got a couple other aldermen here. Any other comments from our colleagues? Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman Ingrassia, Alderman Bosley.
You know what I do, but I don't want to be rude because I am driving right now.
All right.
So what I could do, and just being honest, like I keep it all the way 1,000. It's not a rule yet. I don't want to be disrespectful to the people from the public who came to speak. I don't want to look like I'm being blatantly disrespectful to those individuals who, have come to speak about it. So that's, the reason why I haven't turned my camera on. I'm not holding my phone, but what I will do, if you can give me a minute, I'll pull over and have the discussion just for the sake of the conversation.
Alderman, that's fine. Or, you can always, of course, give your comments on the floor on Friday when the resolution's in front of us.
Oh, I could do that too, but I am in committee.
Okay.
So, it's not a rule right now.
And turn your video on. We'll go ahead and give you a couple minutes here, but otherwise we're gonna move on and take a vote here momentarily.
Okay. You know what? Can you see me? I'm not touching my phone. It's hands-free. I just want to say this. We're not retarded. We are the legislative body. Our job is, as elected officials, is to try to figure out how to enhance the lives of the public and how to be more efficient in whatever it is that we're doing. People have invented multiple things to drive while being hands-free. I guarantee you, Alderwoman Schweitzer and every single person on this call has utilized the phone before while it's on speakerphone, or utilized the phone before while it's being hands-free where you're not actually touching it. We all have also touched the radio, touch buttons in our cars. When you got to turn on the windshield wipers, you got to reach down and do navigation. Well, actually, stop the navigation. You're touching most buttons there while you're driving. So that's actually great. But as you see, I'm not touching my phone. I don't even have to look down at you all. I would just stop at a stoplight. I'm not saying that, this isn't, definitely a way for us to make more of an example for us to be safe, and especially when we are out having meetings. But just being realistic, we are as a board in a very interesting time, in government, and that's just being real. Like we just kind of got to Zoom. Everybody's lives changed immediately. With that technology, we didn't even know about Zoom. A lot of us, alone some years back. But technology has changed. It's getting more efficient. I am, once again, sure within the state legislature at some point in time, hopefully we can come up with laws that could be more particularly on how to utilize your phone. I would think I would be more interested in something that, goes along the lines of you shouldn't be holding your phone and not touching your phone during the time where you are making a vote. utilizing some type of a tripod or hands-free stand that you can put here on your vehicle, hang up on your mirror, put whatever it is to where you don't have to touch your telephone at all during these meetings, or hold your phone at all during these meetings. I think it's efficient ways to do it, especially for individuals who have to be on the road, folks that have to drive. I'm on my way to another meeting right now with some folks about community-related things, but and I'm still in the city of St. Louis and on the South Side. But still in the meeting at the same time. It's good we're able to multitask, and definitely not once again trying to get ready to pull over here now. Definitely not in any way trying to take away anybody's thoughts on how to keep us efficient. But there are ways that we can do this efficiently without having to completely keep those out the loop who are sometimes generally on the road. We have meetings very early during the day, which once again, we used to be, in person with them. I do have a line of question, but I will go through that on the floor. I just wanted to put my 2 cents out there, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Alderman Bosley. Good luck. Safe travels to your meeting. I'm going to turn it over to the Alderwoman from the 6th who has her hand up.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. I just wanted to note really quickly that using the R word is incredibly offensive. It furthers negative stereotypes about people with disabilities. There are much more thoughtful and kind ways to describe people with disabilities, and throwing that word around in a public hearing is completely unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Well said, Alderwoman. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. The chair will entertain a motion on Resolution 178.
I move to pass Resolution 178 out of committee with a due pass recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 8th, seconded by the Alderman from the 9th, that we pass Resolution 178 with a due pass recommendation. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Ballmer. Alderwoman Davis.
Pass.
Alderwoman Howard. Alderman Guenther.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderwoman Rice.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Chairman
Aye.
Coatar.
Aye.
Alderman Ballmer. Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard. 6 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion of the Alderwoman from the 8th, and we have passed Resolution 178 with a due pass recommendation. Let's see, moving along our agenda here. I don't believe we have any committee discussions listed. Any announcements from members of the committee? Seeing none. Okay, excused members. I would like to excuse the Alderman from the 11th for necessary absence and the Alderwoman from the 14th for necessary absence. And with that, Madam Clerk, do we have anything else, or are we done?
No, sir, but I think you said the Alderman from the 11th.
Sorry, what is he, the 10th?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Alderman from the 10th and Alderwoman from the 14th. All
So
right.
noted.
Okay, with that, the Rules Committee is adjourned. Thanks, everybody. See you all later.
Thank you.